Hey everyone, welcome to our November Confidentially Speaking webinar. For those of you who are joining our webinar series for the first time, and this is our sixth in our series for 2024, my name is Elise Margow, founder and CEO of Confidentially Speaking, the home of negotiation. Before we dive into today's webinar topic, in the spirit of conciliation, I acknowledge that I'm speaking on the land of the Boonwurrung and Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation. I pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging, and also extend my respect to elders of any other communities and cultures present today. And now for something completely different. I know that Confidentially Speaking is the home of negotiation, but today we're going to do something that most people don't think involves negotiation, and that's demystifying the art of creating a personal brand with Jocelyn Robinson, brand expert extraordinaire. But what does this have to do with negotiation? I hear you say again. As Jocelyn will explain, personal branding requires a lot of negotiation at every step with ourselves, our time, and our organization. So welcome, Jocelyn. But before we begin, Jocelyn has a very impressive resume, and I'm about to tell you all about Jocelyn's. She's the founder of Elevate 5, a boutique consultancy specializing in B2B, that's business to business, marketing strategy, and implementation with a strong interest in the opportunities leaders unlock when they invest in their personal brand. With over 20 years of experience in senior marketing roles, including leading brand and marketing at ISPT, a $23 billion unlisted property trust, and driving thought leadership programs at PwC, Jocelyn combines big company expertise with a reliable and strategic approach tailored to small, medium businesses. A regular LinkedIn contributor, and I highly recommend that you follow Jocelyn on LinkedIn. Jocelyn shares her insights and reflections and shares great advice for leaders on aligning their personal brands with business goals to establish credibility, build trust, and drive growth in competitive markets. Her ability to translate complex ideas into clear, actionable strategies has helped her clients achieve measurable results. So that's what you do in business world. But beyond the boardroom, beyond the companies, Jocelyn is a passionate cyclist, having raised over $25,000 for Chain Reaction in the year she tackled the challenging ascent of Mount Buller with 20 inspiring women. The thought of going up there. These days, she has swapped road rides for mountain biking, continuing to channel her drive and determination into every aspect of her work. Going on mountain bikes up mountains, that must be really scary for most of us. Or
Listen, it's a little bit like skiing. You can go very, very fast or you can ride a little bit more sedately. But the difference with mountain biking versus road biking is if you hit a tree, it's your fault.
I'm not so sure. That tree got in the way, didn't it, Jocelyn? Well, that just shows an incredible, I think we'd say you're not that risk averse then when it comes to life in general, if you're happy to contend with nature and trees that may or may not be in your way and rocks.
It's a calculated risk, and it's like everything in life. Where you start out and then where you end. You build skills along the way, you speak to experts, you hang out with other people who are better than you. That's the fastest way to get better at something. I think we both know that.
We definitely do. So, having dealt with mountain biking, and that is not something I'm even going to begin to talk about, negotiating the mountains and rocks and trees. Let's talk about brand, because we hear that all the time. No matter whether everybody now talks about brand, whether you're a lawyer, an accountant, whether you're a business, people start talking about your personal brand, your corporate brand. And for most of us, it's this noise in the back of our ears that we don't really understand. So let's start to unpack it. Obviously, because it's a confidentially speaking webinar, we're adding the negotiation angle into it. But starting with yourself, how do you create a personal brand? What is it about you that's going to do that?
Okay, so Elise, we all have a personal brand, but what it is, it's within us. So the best brands are a reveal of what they are, and that's whether that's a company or a personal brand, and they're not a fairy tale. So The personal branding process is to look at what your values are, what you're good at. I think it's really important to articulate what other people say about you, because that's what you are known for. And when you understand those attributes, and they're usually aligned with your career path, your career goals, and the position that you've got within your market, and then you add a little bit more structure and consistency around showing up with those things, you take them into the market, and that's how you build a personal brand. So we pretty much are all doing it every day, because we're all communicating, whether it be by emails or presentations, we're in meetings. Number of us are on LinkedIn. I know a number of you are. So we are showing up, but when you apply a more consistent approach to it, then you're helping those people who matter most to you, and they could be stakeholders, they could be future employers, or they could be future customers. You're helping them understand who you are and what you stand for. So a brand will enter the room before you do, because it's a promise of who you are or what a company is, and it's a promise of how that you're going to relate to people.
Perfect. So now let's bring negotiation into this. When I talk about negotiating with myself for a personal brand, what do you mean by that?
Okay. I've been working with leaders in this space for so long. The number one negotiation point is, do you believe in it? And the second is, will you make time?
Okay.
I work with a number of people that don't believe in it, and there is no convincing people. Recently, I ran a workshop, and one of the directors let me know right up front they didn't believe in it. So I didn't go about convincing them at all, I just put the case forward. And that example, we were particularly talking about whether they would show up on LinkedIn or not. Their LinkedIn profile was about 10 years old.
Yeah.
And yet they had an incredible reputation in the property development industry. So within this new business that he was in as a partner, by not investing and not allowing his personal brand to show up on a channel like LinkedIn, he's shutting down his entire network to that business and to his business partner. So I put the case forward. I could see him working through in his own mind that whole negotiation of would he or wouldn't he. At least I'm pretty pleased to say within a little bit over 24 hours, but the next day, the next night, he was on LinkedIn, the new photo with a new message, and he'd actually updated which company he was currently with.
Yeah.
So that's a prime example. People, not everyone is a believer. We need to negotiate with ourselves about our belief in ego. We're Australians. We absolutely think that it's someone very ego-driven and, very out there sales. But no, it's beyond that now. It has really trickled down to all levels of corporates. So it's the young, ambitious people who are looking to make sure they're in charge of driving their own career path. It's someone who's promoted into a new leadership role, and they're wonderful people to work with because they've been given this opportunity and that they know they need to stand for something with their clients and in their market. And then it's the people who are also then looking to restructure or to move into different spaces. So this comes back to the other negotiation. It's time, because it does take time to build a personal brand. Can it be done in 10, 15 minutes a week? Potentially, if you have the right foundation. But you do need to create space for it, and it will compete against all the other priorities and all the other things calling on us during the day.
Great. And so what I'm hearing, let's take a negotiation tip here. So I'm hearing, in order to negotiate, whether we've got Jocelyn persuading us that we need to, and negotiation is persuasion. Jocelyn persuading us we need to update our brand because it's important, or it's within ourselves. There's a whole lot of preparation that is involved in deciding, why do I need to build my brand? Why do I need to negotiate? What do I have? What is it that I want out of this? That's all preparation. And what is my strategy in building my brand? Is it to create a new job? Is it to be a manager? Is it to get a public profile? It's all the strategic thinking around that. And then we contact you. Is that the
You can absolutely contact me. Listen, and personal brands have really emerged in 2024 as a really hot topic. So what we've seen is the shift in corporate, just not Australia, corporates across the world, is the company brand used to take leadership. And now we know that people buy from people. So what we've seen in 2024 is the rise of the employee or the leader brand. And I'll give you an example. For many, many years in my corporate career, when we had a story to share, a company story, it went up on LinkedIn and it went up as the company post first. And then I would send an email around and ask the leaders and the team and everyone else involved in that story to reshare, comment, and to like that story. I've reversed that now, which is a trend that's been happening this year. And engagement can be 7 to 10 times more when that same story is shared by a leader as a person. This is the project we delivered. This is what I did. I'm so proud of my team. And then the company reshares. So there's just an opportunity that's emerging now. And like everything, there will start to become a gap for those who are investing in it and those who are sitting back watching, hoping.
And do you think that that came about because of the success of people like Bill Gates, Elon Musk? I'm going into the techie field, but Steve Jobs, suddenly they became the face of the brand, and that was very effective. And when they're not, I mean, in the case of Steve Jobs, when he was moved away from Apple, they actually suffered. It seemed to be charismatic, which is a problem and a risk for the company. But that's a discussion for another time. But do you think that was the reason that it's become more personal, or other reasons?
I think there's a bit of a shift going on in the world. We are a little bit more hesitant about companies and the promises that are made, but we know when a promise comes from a person. So companies are faceless and people, I know, Elise, I can call you up and say, but you told me that I would come to this webinar and it would be fun. That's part of the promise that you made. And it is fun.
Let's hope.
So it's shifting some of that responsibility down. I think it's also driven through platforms like TikTok, where we see companies have almost no visibility on TikTok, but leaders and individuals. So a company owner or a founder will share their business story in their own personal voice, and it won't be done as the company, and their engagement can be incredible. We also have a different level of permission when we talk as a person versus a company. There's more ownership. So if you think about it, you think about when you lean into when you're hearing other people share stories, when it's I and me and we did this, how much more engaging is it than the company? We're proud to. So we just, the world is continuing to shift and change, and we need to adapt and flex and be part of it.
Perfect. So now we've created our personal brand, but as you said, in this particular example, we're using that personal brand for the company. And so we come into the company. How do I align my personal brand with the company's organizational goals, or what the company wants me to use my personal brand for?
Great question, Elise. And so every time you join a new company, is that you have that opportunity to align yourself with their, and I'm going to use LinkedIn as an example because it is the biggest platform. So it gives the greatest bang for buck at the moment. So you align yourself to that company. That tells your network that you're working with them, and then you generally share, because LinkedIn is a B2B, business to business platform. So you are sharing stories that relate to your career, your role. So in this way, you are lending. It's part of the package of what you bring to the company. As someone who's a few years or 10 years into their career, your personal brand probably matters less. But anyone coming into a management or senior management role, a leadership role, your personal brand will be part of the due diligence that company does to ensure that you are the right person for the job. That we know it's really important that leaders are, it's maybe it's less about media mentions now, but they're talking at seminars, that they're being invited to different workshops, that their name will secure a meeting with a target that the company couldn't otherwise do. So we lend our personal brands to an organization when we are employed by them. On the flip side, so I mean, ideally, you're not joining organizations where you don't feel there's a values fit, or that you feel, at odds with what their message is. So in an ideal world, we're just going to assume that those things are aligned. So then you become an amplifier of their message, or you become one of their channels to take things to market. And so some of the internal programs, so for example, around values are a classic example. So when leaders and others within the business are writing and sharing things that are values aligned, what you're signaling to the market, to future recruits and to also your clients, is that these things are not just said, but they are lived. So when we talk about conflict, so listen, a lot of companies might have between 3 and 5 values. There might just be 2 or 3 of those that really resonate with you. So I've worked with leaders in the past, and I find one leader who is the spokesperson per value. So I'm not asking you, Elise, to be the spokesperson for all 5 of ours, and you stand up and say, I absolutely believe in all this. I find the person who is best fit, and then in doing that work with them, then it naturally starts to come into their language that they feel some accountability, but I've allowed them to match with the one that speaks to them, the value that speaks to them the most, and not assign them something.
So it's an authentic depiction, because I mean, all of us know who've worked for big corporations. Every year there's another mission statement and values, and rah rah rah, and most of us just go, oh, another one. But if someone's really authentic about those values, that makes the difference. But what happens if I join a company and I am committed to their values, but as you know, in many companies, there are takeovers, there are people, the new managers come in, and while you were aligned with the values before, things have changed. How do I negotiate my authenticity and my belief system when I'm now told, I don't know, if I was making something up, sugar is now meant to be a bad thing.
Okay.
And let's say I've got on a health kick and I've taken out sugar. I didn't have a problem before, but now people are going to say, well, people are being very harsh about sugar, and our company is selling sugary products now. Elise, you've got to go out and market yourself as someone who has that belief system. At the very least, I'm not going to make you the front person for this, but hell, you're going around trying to sell it and tell people this is part of our value system as the type of nutrition we think is good. How do I negotiate that? Because now my personal brand is being asked to sell something that doesn't align with the company.
Yeah. Very interesting. A very tricky question as you talk about, the sugar, and it's one of those things where really people believe. So authentic brands need to be personal. So personal brands need to be authentic. Authentic is the number one word you're going to hear when we talk about personal brand. So when something doesn't feel authentic and doesn't sit right with you, my advice, and I've done it myself with companies, is just keep quiet. So the company should not ever tell you to pass something on. You may be a leader and you may need to go and front a group of investors or front a group of stakeholders or an internal team and take a message. That really, if that's not aligned with your personal brand, you should have worked on and resolved that earlier. One of the examples that I've certainly seen is where in senior meetings that there's, decisions, and someone might have voted against a decision. And if I think of the property industry, so it might have been an acquisition. So, quite clearly, if someone is not fully in, then that person shouldn't be asked to be that person to take it to market and to be the lead source of that. So if you're not aligned with where your company is, or that ideally it's not such a big thing as in it's sugar and you're anti-sugar, but there's, a smaller project or a smaller initiative that they go down, just be quiet. You absolutely don't need to say anything. And that's to be taken up the line. So it's very clear that you will not be that spokesperson.
And to do so in a respectful manner. Don't start screaming and running outside like some people did at Netflix, screaming and shouting because they used a comedian that they didn't like. Well, I suppose the next step is if the company aligns to a brand, and I bring the sugar back. If I'm that against sugar, why am I working for the company? I should be moving on if there is a huge change in strategy and focus, because then it could damage my brand.
Absolutely. And your personal brand is the bit that you own. The personal brand is what walks in with you to every job interview, I know a number of people will ultimately be looking for board roles, or they're out in the marketplace and trying to get on conference programs and on the speaking circuit. So your personal brand is yours. You do need to be protective of it. And this is why, we're also saying if you invest in it as well, then you're making it actually very clear what you stand for.
Excellent. So we move on then, because we've touched on the personal and we've touched on aligning to the corporate brand. But now there can come a time where there's major conflict, not just within my personal brand, the corporate brand, but the market brand, and things get really sticky. You've said keep quiet, but sometimes within your business, if it's your personal business and the market has moved in a way that you have to move, how do you deal with these conflicts? How would you, well, I'm going to put it to you, because now we're getting to the negotiation, the dispute resolution. How do I negotiate? Because you say keep quiet, but I might not be able to. So how do I get to the point where the company is satisfied that I'm quiet?
Yeah.
How am I dealing with it?
So that's not something that should ever play out in the public space. So that is a conversation back with you and the leader that you report to. If you're really being asked to do something that's against what you stand for and against your beliefs, so the company's done a 180 and used to sell apples and now is selling chocolate bars, then this goes beyond personal brand. This is a key decision for you to think about. Are you in the right place? Many of us in our careers will find that we started in a company working for somebody, and again, we work for particular people. So you are absolutely dedicated and confident, and that was the leader that you wanted to work for. And things will shift and change. We're in very fluid workplaces, and the marketplace is very fluid, and a new leader comes in, or suddenly your reporting lines change, and that person can be asking you to do things that you're less comfortable with, or their vision for your team isn't the same as the old person's vision. Well, it's time for you to organize a way to go and have a conversation with them. I think honesty, and that's often a part of the personal brand that you bring into the workplace, really sit down and have an honest conversation. I've done that before. I remember an appointment was made, and it was somebody that, I would need to work with and help build this leadership voice. And I was very confused about it. So I asked the leader who appointed this more junior leader, I asked to go for a coffee, and I said, I really actually don't understand this person's appointment in this space. And I'm trying to work out how I could and should be working with them, because to date, they don't give an indication that they want to do anything in the marketing space. So let us problem solve. Let me use your expertise. You've seen something in them. How do I tap into that? And then how do I find a path forward? So communication is at the heart of everything we do. And potentially you need to be brave, potentially you need to be direct, but to have those conversations earlier rather than later, so that you are still standing true to who you are. And I think that a lot of people who are investing in their personal brand, they are willing to stand up and be seen as something. But we should also be once was told something, it was like strong opinions held lightly. And I think that's really good in this
Yeah.
space. So fundamentally, I don't think that this is the way forward. So let me be an adult about this and let me ask for that meeting. Let us go behind closed doors or in a cafe and let me show some vulnerability and ask for clarification to understand why. And if you get the right answers or you get a way that you can continue to work, fabulous, you're on the way. If it's a no and you're feeling you're being blocked, or that the company now has moved in a direction that is absolutely different, and it will happen, we will all face this in our careers, then you need to decide if it's time for you to depart. Take your personal brand with you, take your fabulous personal brand out into the world, and be fabulous somewhere else.
Fantastic. So in I think less than 5 minutes, you've gone through the whole preparation and then of negotiation and then getting ready to have the conversation with the other person, because the first step is to work out what you want. But the second step is to say, well, I'm dealing with someone else, right? So I've got to prepare to persuade the other side. And what you've done is you've thought, okay, before I'm going to prepare, I'm going to find out more about what's going on. So before I even have the discussion with the problematic person, I'm going to call on someone who knows them and understands the background, which then enables me to work out how am I going to approach this. Find out a bit more about the person, find out a bit more about the project, find out a bit more about the change of direction, and then prepare for that conversation. And I love that concept of, I'm going to be strong, but I'm going to go lightly. So I'm going to use my active listening. I love that in negotiation. I'm going to use my active listening, listen to what they say, but not be afraid to say, well, I'm sorry. This is the reason why it doesn't work for me. And then I need a backup plan. As you said, I've got to work out if it's that bad, I might need to walk away. What's going to happen if I walk away? Do I do it in the meeting? Do I take my time? I'm not just going to say, oh, well, that's the case. I'm walking out of here and I haven't worked out what's going to happen. I'm going to earn a salary for the next 3 months or 6 months as I look for another job. So it's kind of that which you do automatically without thinking through the negotiating process.
Yeah. Well, I'm certainly not in the people and culture business, but I would say, I would always say, just take a deep breath, go home and sleep on it. Go and speak to the people you trust the most, and then start to plan your exit strategy. Now I'm going to give one tip here, because I've had people in companies I've worked with over the years. They say, "Oh, if I get on LinkedIn, it suddenly looks like I'm looking for a job."
Yes, so many.
And we all know, and that is a real cue where you suddenly activate and shift and change things over. So you all now have permission. You could say, no, I'm inspired by what Jocelyn said in Elise's webinar, and I'm investing in my personal brand. And that's because I am looking for my next role with you. I'm looking for you to take me more seriously. I'm looking for our clients to see me as someone with insights and knowledge and, a voice and, someone that they can really warm to. So work on your personal brand now before you're at the 11th hour, when you do need to be taking it to market and trying to find a new job.
Perfect. And make sure that, because we talk about LinkedIn, but so many people, especially, I'm not going to age myself. I do have Facebook and Instagram, but definitely not TikTok. But many people coming up, I would say the millennials would all, and the later, I think Gen A. I really am past. I'm beginning to lose sight of all the new Gen Z.
The younger, the younger people in our workforce,
the younger people in the workforce would have grown up with so much of the social media, and most of them would be on TikTok by this stage. And it's important to remember that your personal brand goes to TikTok as well. And it goes on to Instagram. And even if you make it private, other people can show this. So when I'm building my brand and I'm looking at the corporate and, even starting my LinkedIn profile, and explaining to people that I'm building it, it is important to know that I've got to be careful what I've said on TikTok and that which might clash with the brand.
Absolutely, but
Yeah.
it shouldn't clash with your own brand.
Mm.
You are you are welcome to have your own views, but do know we all have a digital footprint. So when I am doing personal brand sessions, part of what I do, and I'm asking everybody to do it this afternoon, is to Google your name. You'd be amazed how many people never have and what comes up. Interestingly, when I do it, there's some projects I've worked on where I've been included in the thank yous. Charity donations of all things come up as part of what is out there. I'm lucky to have a relatively unique first name, Jocelyn, but Robinson's very common, and you'd be surprised, Elise. I think there's at least 20 Jocelyn Robinsons in this world, but very clearly I have a space around my name. I certainly own it in Australia.
Yeah.
The US market's a bit more flooded, but I do look, and I will encourage my boys to be conscious of what's showing up there. And it's the same with personal brand, as I say, that there are some very polarizing issues, and you need to question whether you should be talking about them or not. So one, for example, when we know it's a very, very hot topic, is working from home.
Yeah.
So whilst I worked in the property industry, I have absolutely chosen to never go out and talk about whether I'm for or against working from home, because it's not going to contribute to my personal brand. So my personal brand is very much associated with this new business that I'm building. It's not null and void. It might be an area I have some opinions on. I'm going to save that for when I'm sitting with my friends and my family and the people that I love and trust, and I will talk about those things. I won't be documenting them and putting them out that way.
Excellent advice. Really good advice. Now, this is this is a chance for you to also start asking questions of Jocelyn, because I'm hugging the microphone here and asking her all the questions I'm interested in. But please feel free to get on the chat and ask Jocelyn some questions while we have her in the room. But Jocelyn, moving on for that, you've mentioned we've started going into the long-term strategy, because I think in this 2-minute Instagrammable TikTok world, we sometimes think, well, today my brand's going to be X and then I'm going to change it. And I don't think long-term. I might be thinking of, I don't know, my business for 6 months or something I want to achieve. I want a new job, so I'm going to put something out there. How do I achieve that long-term sustainable brand where you walk in the room and you're like, it's Jocelyn, she's the brand expert. I know that this is the person I want to see if I'm talking about brand.
Yeah. Fabulous, Elise. So part of that is that what I say, you need to document what your values are and personal values. There's a lot of really good stuff out there. Check out Brene Brown for personal values. I really like to then delve into what other people say about you. So I know the feedback that I always get is I get stuff done, that I'm really easy to work with, that I'm creative and insightful. Those are really wonderful things. I'm going to own all of that language. Then I will wash that against what are other people doing in my space that I admire. I think it's really helpful to be following someone where you just think, wow, they've really got this together. If I could end up being like them, then I think that I will have made a really big impact. So I've certainly still follow, but over the years, I've always followed a couple of people who are showing me by leading by example of how I could go about things. And they come through my feed and, I keep an eye on what they're doing. And then you need to wash that against with, what your role is, what your currently role and your focus. So you might be a lawyer at the moment, but you might be thinking you're going to launch your own fitness brand. And so you'd be looking for those crossover things that can start to seed you there. So like everything, and this is a wonderful time of year to do planning, Elise. We all know December, January, we're busy, we're winding down, but we're setting ourselves up for success in 2025. So whether you've got a 6-month, 12-month, 3-year, 5-year personal plan, that your personal brand is part of that. So what your opportunities are. You might kind of fit within that, what you've done in your performance appraisal and where the company thinks you'll be in 12 months, or what you've discussed with the leader that you're working with, where you would like to go and what opportunities you'd like to create. So if you've put in your personal development plan at work that you want to speak at an industry, maybe not the major conference, but you know that the industry does a whole lot of series of little seminars and lunches, and they've got panels during the year, and you've put, I want to be on that panel. Then you need to kind of create some goals. Okay, so how do I show up as the person that they'd want on the panel? What are they talking about? What would they want me to have an opinion on? How do I show that I have some original thought, or how do I show that I can collect and hear different things that are going on in the industry and then package that up as a statement or a perspective? So it's just, it's about deciding where you are now, where you want to go, or it could just be aligned with your current role. But it is mapping things out. I would say 6 to 12 months at a minimum. Within that, you also map out who the key stakeholder groups that you're trying to influence. I like to get people to talk about 3 big topics, industry topics that they would or could have an opinion on, and then break that into 2 smaller subtopics, and that gives them 6 content pillars that they can work off. And if you've got 6 content pillars, Elise, you can write probably 18 different pieces of content. Now, I publish weekly pretty much on LinkedIn. Other people, the cadence that they'll feel more comfortable with is every 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks. I just really believe you should be on LinkedIn, and on LinkedIn, you should be showing signs of life.
I'm going to just ask one question, and I see there is something coming up there. But before we do that, what about, you talked about looking at what is good about you, but sometimes your reputation precedes you and it's not always good. What do I do about that?
Okay, well, you should be taking a good, long, hard look at yourself. So it's unfortunate, but this is within your control and within your destiny. You might just be, listen, I worked at PwC on and off for 10 years. So I know that you get people in those younger ranks and they just give off this, I'm just so busy and I'm swamped and whatever. And, in this reflection time that we have at this time of year, I would say, like, I want to reset that. Everybody looks at me and just thinks that I'm busy and I'm running from one thing to the next. And I've either been told that by somebody who cares about me, or my peers have just said, come on, you got to settle down, like, we're all busy, but you just acting like you're saving lives. So it's a personal reflection thing, and then make a conscious decision that you want to show up differently. So you can't ultimately, change fundamentally who you are, and values are one of those things that don't often change, but the way you show up and why is something that you can adjust. I also know people that want to change industries, that they've been working in retail and they want to move into healthcare. So when they set their personal brand to start to phase down out of being active in retail commentary and even sharing comments on LinkedIn, and start to move into healthcare, but also find those synergies and find those attributes or skills which are very transferable, and put a focus on those, then they're starting to smooth the path to move from being this person and to this person that they've got their eye on in the future.
Perfect. So we can change brand, but in the case of PwC, what happened with the bad news that came along, you might need a professional like you to help us rebrand, right?
It's the fastest way. I work with a lot of specialists, in my business, and it's just because I want to do things quickly, efficiently, and I want the best of the advice I can get so that I'm hitting the ground running.
Perfect. So now this is great. We've got 2 questions, one from Ben. What if there's nothing unique about me? How do I differentiate my brand from others? And that's a very Australian question. I don't think we'd have the same question coming out of some other countries. But what what if, I just seem like to be the man on the Clapham omnibus? Sorry, that's a legal terminology. If I feel very average. I've got some basics here, but there's nothing really unique. What do I do?
I'm just going to say, oh, Ben, I do know that you are a unique person. I just don't think that you've looked inside and you haven't found that reveal. You may feel you're just the same as your peers, but potentially you've got a hobby, which is something. So maybe you aren't into bike riding. Maybe it's, something else. But there is something where you can start to create some space and be known for things. Personal brand isn't all about what you say. I have this wonderful mentor that I've worked with, over many, many years, and she has this collection of like 100 pairs of glasses. I'm known for wearing green. I'm wearing green today because it's one of my signature things. So there are also some subtle visual cues, Ben. It could be about the greeting that you give. I also really believe that a lot of people have got a signature word. Mine is fabulous. I love to sprinkle it around everywhere because it's such a happy word. I know someone who their word is awesome and somebody else who their word is brilliant. So you can bring a positivity and move yourself out of this sameness. But Ben, I know. And I know that if I asked your mum, she would give me a whole list. But the reality, Ben, is you are unique. You just haven't admitted to it yet.
And just to say, we didn't coordinate. My brand color is red, but it is, I suppose, very Christmassy for our last webinar.
We're not singing jingle bells.
No, we're not singing jingle bells. The other thing is, Mia, we're going, what are some things my LinkedIn should have to better my personal brand? That's a good question, Mia, because I don't.
Yeah. So you need a photo, a recent photo. If you're a happy person, it's a smiley photo. If you're a serious person in a serious industry, that's absolutely fine. You can use your corporate headshot. Probably don't use a beach shot, but you need a good photo. If you add a banner, which you can just create quickly in Canva and then upload that into the back of your profile, it makes your profile look loved and cared for. Invest in writing a little bit about your about. Make sure that the companies that you've worked for are all listed. One little tip there is that a lot of companies, well, pretty much every company is on LinkedIn, but if you put the company name in and you don't get the logo, then you haven't used the right version of that company. And some companies are PTY, LTD, but whatever. But you want the logo because you want their brand to support your brand. The key thing about LinkedIn is LinkedIn is a community. So if you go into LinkedIn, me, I'm going to post and I want the whole, my network to fall all over me. It doesn't work that way. You have to put in and then you get to take out. So there are some rules. We say that, you should probably like and comment 5 posts before you put up one of your own or, or every week. So what you are doing, and listen, this is a great thing for your personal brand, that you are active and a contributing member of your community. So remember, LinkedIn is an online community. It is not your stage. It is not your solo gig.
Perfect. And that's a really good point. Should we be commenting on other people's posts?
Absolutely, Elise. But then find your own authentic voice. There's been a real theme on LinkedIn in the last couple of weeks. Do not let ChatGPT write it. Like a comment can just be 10 or 12 words.
Yeah.
Maybe it's a little bit more than love it or good job or well done team.
Yeah.
But find something to say. So if you're not currently commenting on LinkedIn posts, set yourself a goal. I'd like to think that you're on LinkedIn twice a week at least. So just try to find something you can comment on. So what you're doing is you're building the muscle and you're starting to practice and you're showing yourself it's not very scary. It's not scary at all. Just get out there and do it. So give it a try.
Perfect. And should I have a presence on every platform, says Anthony? It sounds exhausting.
It sure is, Anthony. I agree with you there. Okay, so we're in a business mindset here. So LinkedIn is a no-brainer. LinkedIn is the B2B social channel in Australia. So I definitely invest on LinkedIn. I do have Instagram, which I think I'm going to take down because for my business, She don't have many beautiful photos to share. Facebook I use personally, so I like to keep quite a divide between my personal life and my business life. So I do keep things very separate. I was playing with TikTok this year, and just simply because I wanted the experience and I wanted to be able to recount that as I share with other people. I haven't posted for quite a while. And yeah, it was exhausting. I was filming 4 to 5 videos a week and then having to edit them and then post them and whatnot. So I've kind of scaled that one back. But I did it as an experiment. I learned a lot out of it, and I have some great stories to share. So that's a win for me.
Oh, next webinar, what to do and not do on TikTok, right? Negotiating TikTok. Right. Finally, I think we talked about social media, Martin's question. Last question from Janet. How do I find things to say consistently about my brand? Because, it is exhausting. I know we put up weekly tips and we advertise for confidentially speaking.
Yeah.
But it becomes like, what do we say? I've told you about my negotiation. I've told you that we've had webinars. I've told you this. What more can I say every single week?
Okay, so this is where you can invest some time building some content pillars. So I say you normally have 3 big buckets. It could be the industry that your clients are in. It could be your specialization. So you could be an accountant that works in the manufacturing sector. So there's a whole lot to say about accounting and even more to say about manufacturing. And then you might can't think of a third off the top of my head. So you break that down into some other things. You might be in a people and culture role. So you're very, very focused on talent acquisition and helping people be better at interviewing. So you go into what it is your skill set is and what you're sharing and what you're doing every day, and you look for that. Most people are actually overlooking the really important stuff that people want to know about. I've got a trick I've learned. So I'm a big user of AI. So I use the ChatGPT app, and when I walk out of a meeting, I've got a thread all about my LinkedIn posts, and it's got my persona, it's got the way I write, it's got a whole lot of styling things in the back end. It's also got my roadmap, so it knows what topics are important to me. But I'll just voice record. I'll just drop a whole lot of thoughts and then tell it that I'm going to come back to it later when I'm sitting at my desktop, and boom, I've got content out of that. So I've really tried to streamline and tried to, just remove that whole obstacle. So I would say out of any of the business or work conversations or meetings you're going to, you'll be hearing things which is something you can share. Another tip for LinkedIn is, if you're just getting started, is there's nothing wrong with a short and sweet post, Elise. We don't need to start writing articles always. And, LinkedIn, think of the way we consume it. Ask yourself the way you are. A lot of us are using it on our phone. I'm waiting for coffee. I'm waiting for the lift. I'm having a quick little look there. I'm on the train. So little bite-sized chunks are better than doing something long and evolved. It also means that whatever schedule that you've made a promise, and you don't need to make any promises to me, make it to yourself, weekly, fortnightly, monthly, every 6 weeks, that I would be really surprised that you can't find something to say. And you're not necessarily talking about your brand, because that's self-promotion. What you're doing is talking about things that you are doing or that you're aware of. And so you're sharing insights, you're sharing perspectives, and your brand is being built off the back of that. It's not shameless self-promotion. Please don't do that, because I can, even the people who love you most in your network, the ones that you went to school with or university, they're just going to find that really boring. So yeah, find something to say, share a little bit of your greatness from within.
And so I say for extroverts, that seems lovely. For introverts, you're going to have to work on it.
Elise, it's completely possible.
It is. Everything is possible.
No, right? No one is more of an introvert than me. But I really enjoy because I've seen the opportunities that it creates for me. I've also seen it's a way that I connect with all these incredible people I've met through my career and kind of remind myself that, I remind them that I'm around and things. And it's when you have someone pop up from a number of years ago, liking or commenting, it's probably one of the most warmest, heartfelt things that can happen in your day. So I actually make a special effort to reach out to that person and to thank them for their support. And next thing you're having a conversation, hey, what are you doing now? Like it's just, we are interested in people. And this is just another way to keep those connections live.
Perfect. And on that note of being interested in people and creating personal brand, I think the hour is almost up, Jocelyn. And so, firstly, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom. We try to creating personal corporate brands with conflict and everything into 1 hour. Thank you for your patience in doing so. Where can people find you? I know it's LinkedIn as well, but tell them where to.
I'm on LinkedIn. I would absolutely love for everybody that's on this webinar today to make sure you reach out to me, connect with me, send me a message, find me on LinkedIn. I've got a whole lot to say. I'm often sharing there, and I'd love to have you in my network.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Jocelyn. And as for us, this is the final Confidentially webinar for this year. We have already started lining up our guests for next year. It's going to be quite an exciting array of new ways to think about negotiation and the world in general. To spread Confidentially Speaking can be found on LinkedIn, as can I. The brand, I guess, is more negotiation and legal, but there we go. We also, if you want to find out anything about Confidentially Speaking, www.confidentiallyspeaking.com.au. Please feel free to connect. Please feel free to ask us any questions. And that leaves me to say, have a wonderful end of year. May 2025 be a great time for all of you, both professionally and personally, and may it bring peace and happiness for all of us. Thank you for joining us today.